I had no idea how expensive college was. I had absolutely no idea. I was like, if I apply, I can go.
What's up, everybody? I go by the name of Domo.
And I go by the name of Yoshiko.
And each week, we sit down with cultural ambassadors
to talk about how they defied societal norms
to live their lives
with no blueprint.
My name is Mayowa Aina. I'm from Tacoma. I am a student at the University of Washington, Seattle campus, and sometimes Tacoma campus. Graduating this spring, summer-ish. It's a little flexible. Walk in the spring, graduating in summer.
Oh, okay.
No. I'm a human being who cares about other human beings, and I do things related to that passion. Mm-hmm. Is that helpful? I don't know. It's real broad.
No, that's
good.
That's
okay,
it.
you can go. You want to? I was born in Louisiana.
I was born by the real. No. How do you define culture?
The first thing that pops into my mind when I think about culture are cultural products. So the music, the writing, the workspaces, the built environment, and how we interact with those things. Literature, art, the things that we produce by interacting with the people in our spaces.
I like that. No one has given that answer.
Yeah, that's original.
That would have been something I would have said. I was thinking about it because I was like, how would I answer that question?
Right.
I just steal your answer.
Where did you? Yeah, that's what we're doing here. Writing a report. We actually might be writing a report. We'll get to that later. How did you come to that definition of culture?
So as a person who identifies as Black, I think a lot about Black culture, and a lot of that is sort of characterized by the theft and appropriation of our culture, and that takes the form of things that we produce, even down to like language and the way that we look. And so thinking about Black culture and what that means to me, it's always sort of about resilience and continuing to produce things even though other people take them all the time. So
be specific.
Okay.
About the stealing and the appropriation of Black culture. Folks are going to hear this podcast and they're going to be like, what's she talking about?
Okay.
And so, I mean, I personally know what you're talking about,
yes.
But be specific.
Yes. One thing that's intensely personal to me is my hair and my hairstyles. And for people who, I mean, the natural hair movement is like popping right now, but when I shaved my head, it was not. And I think that was sort of like a journey that I started to like learn about my own natural hair texture and why I had always worn it straight and why my mom loved for me to have it straight and I would have relaxers and get it permed. So the natural hair process it introduced me to a lot of processes that were societal and institutional that forced Black women to want to wear their hair in a way that emulated like European beauty standards. And it showed me a lot of the ways that Black women are treated differently and thought of negatively based on their hairstyles. And then when you see those hairstyles on women who are not Black and they're on the covers of magazines and they're being praised for starting new trends and it's a style that you were persecuted for,
Right.
it feels it feels almost violent. It's like, that's not fair. And it's like, you stole that. You took that from me.
Right.
And when it was me, it was bad, but now it's on you, it's good. And so that was like my first experience, I think, dealing with that.
How old were you when you became cognizant of this?
And I cut my hair. I transitioned for like 2 years in high school. I cut my hair I was a junior in high school.
Like just shaved it completely off?
I wasn't bald. I had like 2 inches.
Okay.
So
Okay.
it was a low cut.
Yeah.
It was a low cut, but I mean, it was different, and I had to be real confident in school the next day, and I didn't know what to do with my hair. I didn't know what products to use. I was like, this is gonna be a process. And I think I put braids in like very soon after that. Like as soon as it was long enough to attach some hair to it, I attached some hair to it.
Right.
And now I attach hair to it as a means of protecting it. But back then it was very much so like, I need some length, something around my neck, something to like touch. This is too short.
Right.
And people were like, "Oh, you look like a boy, and your hair was so much cuter before." And it was hard. It was hard.
And then people would putting their hands in black women's hair or just black people's hair in general.
It's so fluffy. It's so curly. Look at your little puff. It's like, oh, leave me alone. Leave me alone.
And it's interesting because I can only relate because I grew my hair out in middle school, and people would just violate and put their fingers through your hair and want to touch it, and oh, can I braid it? And it was like, no, get your nasty hands out of my stuff. Like, and then just having to explain black hair to people. Yeah, that's a whole nother podcast. I'm sure there's one that exists, and if there's not, please somebody run with it.
There has to be.
Talk to me about the cultures that you identify with and the cultures that you grew up around.
So immediately I think of black culture. My mom is from Alabama, and I have pretty brown skin, so I'm associated with the black diaspora.
Yes.
But my dad is from Nigeria.
Okay.
And so that is a very strong presence in my life. My name is Nigerian through and through, first, middle, and last name.
Okay.
So I didn't get an English middle name like my brothers got. So it's very apparent that I am Nigerian or some sort of African or some sort of different kind of black. So those would be the two most prominent cultures that I identify with, I think.
Do your names mean anything?
My first name, Maiwa, means to bring joy and happiness to the world. And then my middle name, Ajoke, means the one that everyone takes care of. I'm the baby and the only girl in the family. And then my last name is family name.
Shout out to the babies of the family.
I do get taken care of.
That's to bring joy to the world.
Right, no pressure.
That's a huge responsibility.
It's a beautiful name, though.
It is a beautiful name.
I think my dad was just happy, and he wanted to give me a name that symbolized that.
Nice. That is awesome.
It's a good name.
I feel good about it now.
What do you remember?
What do you mean? Oh, wait, going back. What do you mean?
Yeah, now. That was good. That was okay.
What do you mean you feel good about your name now?
Because my name, if you've like seen it written down, or like when I first introduce myself to people, it's people are not used to hearing that name, so it's always like a record scratch. Like, hold on, what? Say that again. What's your name? How do you say it? And so it was always like, especially growing up, like very. It just made me stand out. You know, as a kid, you just want to fit in like as much as possible. And so anytime we had a substitute teacher, my last name starts with A, so I'm always at the top. And if I wasn't, I'd be like the second or third. And so the teacher might get to like the first two people and then see my name, and that would be the reminder. And she would be like, okay, if I butcher anybody's name, feel free to correct me. And so that's when I knew that it was my turn.
Did you ever just say, here, I didn't call a name, I know, but it's me, this is how you say it, I'm here?
A couple times, but after a while, I had gone through a couple different grades with like the same group of people that lived in my neighborhood. So after a while, people thought it was funny and they would just do it for me, so I would never have to like say my name. Like people would always be like, oh, that's Maiwa, she's right there. I'm like, yeah, that's me.
Nice. Maiwa, Iowa with an M in front of it. Maiwa, right?
That's me.
Right? What do you remember learning about your cultures growing up? And what was there anything that was in your home that kind of gave you that foundation of culture?
I think I vividly remember in third grade, I think it was, we had to do these like we made these like culture boxes or whatever. They're supposed to represent like your family, and they wanted you to do like a family tree on both sides, and you had to put in artifacts from your culture, and like you're supposed to decorate it with the flag from the country that you were from and all that stuff. So I remember like doing a deep dive. I was so excited. Like, this is cool, you know. So I talked to my grandma on my mom's side, and she was telling me about how she and her husband were like sharecroppers, and how the children had to like pick fruit and those sorts of things, and how she was a cleaner for like one of the political officials in the area, and so she like stayed in their house, and it was like really interesting to hear her talk about that. On my dad's side, like making different kinds of foods. I remember we brought in food on the day that we presented, and we were supposed to share it with the class and stuff. Hearing different like Yoruba words, and he would like tell me stories, like children's stories that he learned growing up, and how he went to school, and how he lived with like everyone in the village. And it was just really like interesting being that young and having that deep dive into where my family comes from and having to be so different.
Yeah. There seems to be a huge sense of community on both sides.
Yeah, I think so. There's a real desire in my parents, I can tell, to make sure that both those cultures are still prominent for us, because my parents live super far from both of their families. Like all of my mom's family is in Alabama, all of my dad's family is in Nigeria. And they left in like, I think they met in Alabama and moved to Seattle in like, or they moved to like Tacoma Federal Way area. My dad was at Fort Lewis in like late 80s. And like I think my mom has visited Alabama maybe like 4 or 5 times since then. My dad's visited Nigeria like maybe like 2 or 3 times since then. And so there's these long periods of time where they don't see their family members and don't engage with them.
Do they ever come to Seattle, family?
A couple times. Sometimes people have been able to come, but it's also just like really, really far. And they're like, you guys live so far away. It's way easier for you to come to us, which like that never made sense to me because it's the same distance.
Right.
They felt like it was easier for us to come.
That's right.
And both my parents have really big families. My mom has, I think there's 12 of them total. And my dad, I think, is one of 9. And so they have big families, and everybody has children. And I think it was hard for them being away because we didn't get to grow up with our cousins and be part of that. And so,
is everybody else in Alabama and Nigeria? Wow.
Yeah.
So y'all were the only. That's kind of similar to my family, where we were the only ones who were up in Seattle, but we moved up here because my aunt on my mom's side was stationed in Fort Lewis for a little bit of time before going, I guess, everywhere else because she was in the military. But now I have family in Virginia, family in Louisiana, but like we're like the only ones who are in Seattle.
And it just feels so far from. It's like a whole different region. Like we're way up here, and like people don't even know that Washington exists.
Yeah. Washington D.C.
Yeah, and like no.
West California, above north.
Keep going.
Yeah.
It's kind of by Canada.
Right up by Canada, you know.
Right. What was that like growing up in Federal Way / Tacoma?
From what I can remember, when I was younger, like I remember my class in Federal Way being like super duper diverse. I remember that much. And I remember my best friend Clarice, this little Asian girl, and then my other best friend was she's this little black girl, and I had another best friend who was a white girl. So like we were like a little rainbow coalition that like to draw like Sailor Moon and like pretend we were characters. And I was always the purple one.
Shout out to Prince.
And then I remember moving to like the suburbs of Tacoma, northeast Tacoma, and just like it being super duper white. And that was like a big transition that I don't know that I necessarily like understood in 3rd and 4th grade. And I was always just like this really introverted child anyway. So like that made me even more so like conscious and like just into my shell. But I liked my childhood. I thought I had a good time, and I never felt like I don't remember ever feeling super isolated or super like I really, really stood out. Like, I think the new kid always stands out, like, oh, you're interesting, you're different. We all live around here. Where do you come from? But after that, like, I went through middle school and high school with like all the same people because we've been there for forever now, it feels like. So yeah, I liked growing up where I grew up. I didn't feel like there was anything wrong with it. I did grow up in a suburb, so like we weren't around anything really. So we just like played with the other kids in the neighborhood, and I spent a lot of time indoors actually, because where we live is like right on a major road, so we couldn't like play like around there, and we had a really tiny like backyard. So I remember my parents saying that they wish we had a bigger backyard, because at our old house we had this huge backyard. It was fun to play in. But yeah, I ended up spending a lot of time indoors, watching TV, having friends over, going to friends' houses. And I was cool. I was chilling for the most part.
Where'd you go to middle school?
I went to middle school at Meeker Middle School.
Whoa.
Yes.
Where?
In Tacoma, Northeast Tacoma.
That's weird. Only because I went to a school called Meeker Junior High.
Oh, really?
And it was in Kent.
Oh, interesting.
And so I was like, wait, what?
Is Meeker a person?
I
don't know.
I think so. I don't. We had a big mural of somebody.
I just thought it was dope because it was so close to my last name, and I used to tell people the school was named after me.
Is it on Meeker Street?
No. Was yours on Meeker Street?
No.
I was about to say, I know where Meeker Street is in Kent.
My mom used to work on Meeker Street.
Oh, crazy. What did she do?
She was a social worker for Child Protective Services. So DSHS had an office over there.
Wow. Small world. Yeah, I used to, I know where that is. So Meeker Middle School, just culturally, what was that like, and what did you find yourself getting into?
Meeker Middle School was interesting. We wore a uniform of like, we had to wear khaki pants or blue pants, and we could only wear blue or white polos. And I remember that was like, everybody hated it, and that was the first time we had to do like argumentative papers, and they're like, okay, you have to make an argument, and it has to be like the controversial debate things or whatever. And I remember everybody would always want to do uniforms. Like, we don't want to wear uniforms anymore because XYZ thing.
Oh, man.
So that was interesting. I remember those were like my first school dances at like 2 p.m., right after school.
Yeah, that's right.
What? Wait, did you have that too?
School dances at 2
p.m.?
I think so. Yeah, it was like right after school.
Right after school.
Yeah.
No, we had ones that were like at least 6 to 8.
In middle school?
Yeah.
That's kind of young.
I know.
Listen, and I don't even want to speak about what happened there on this podcast. But I'm just gonna keep it moving.
Right, middle schoolers.
Right, yes. And so high school. Where'd you go to high school, and what kind of student were you?
I went to high school at Stadium High School in Tacoma. I was always a very studious student. And so going back to like middle school, that was the first time where we sort of like stratified all the kids into like, we called them the highly capable classes, and then there was just like the other classes.
Okay.
And the highly capable was on the second floor, and all the regular classes were on the first floor.
Oh, man.
Yeah, so kids were like literally stratified and separated onto different floors.
Yeah.
But I mean, I was always like the kid that was trying to do the most challenging thing that was available. So in high school, I did like all the AP classes until there were no more AP classes. I was in the band, and I was part of like, we had like a band council. I did band like government. That was kind of weird, but we just talked about what things we wanted to play.
You were a part. You were a part of the band council?
Yeah.
What did you play?
I played the clarinet.
Nice. Nice. I remember students would start with the clarinet, and then a bunch of them would switch to the saxophone because they thought it was cooler, and then the whole thought about like tracking students is interesting in public schools. They started tracking students like in elementary school, really. And it started with math.
What do you mean tracking?
So it was like you would break out of different math levels. Like by the time we were in fifth grade, fifth or sixth grade, because Kent's elementary school went from kindergarten to sixth grade, they would take students and say, basically bottom level math, middle level math, high level math, and they would put you in different classes at this time of the day. And so the kids who were in a higher math, they would just let them rock and not have to sit with the kids who weren't in high level math, which unfortunately, from my standpoint, unfortunately, it set kids up, because by the time you got to middle school, like you were now chose between like math 7, pre-algebra, algebra. And so it was just like you were already being tracked from elementary school. So if you were in the slow math in elementary school, excuse my term of words, but if you were in the slow math in elementary school, then you were done. Like that was all, you were already tracked through high school to tell you what math you were going to be in, which, you know, also sets up for your understanding of logic and your understanding in science, your understanding in all of these other classes.
So basically, if you weren't at level,
Yeah.
at your grade level.
Yeah, I remember there was one event where my parents took me to, like, I didn't know this at the time, but I think they took me to get tested to see if I could skip a grade. And I think I remember them being like sort of bummed because I didn't score high enough or something like that. So like I had maybe like just missed the cutoff or something like that. And so they're like, you should have been able to skip a grade, but you can't. And I was like, okay. I don't know what that means.
Not set back to a previous grade, I'm okay.
How old were you?
I must have been really young. I think it was like around elementary. But it was interesting because my first, second, and third grade class was a first, second, and third grade class. So all those kids were together all day. And I had the same teacher for all 3 years. Okay. In that class, too, you had like the purple group and the red group and the yellow group and the orange group, and the purple group was going to go do this like higher level reading because they were at a higher reading grade or whatever, and then your group was going to go do like whatever was at your level or something like that. And so like I don't know if we totally knew that as kids, but we probably did, and just didn't like just internalized it. I'm like, oh, okay, well I guess I can't do that one.
Right.
You know?
Wait, so you had class with, so first, second, and third was all those students were clumped together in one class? Interesting. Such different levels, skill levels.
Yeah. So in high school, we had a couple different career counselors and like college advisor counselors who were like super invested in helping students get to college. And for my family, like me going to college was never a question. Like that was just a given. Like you were going, like both my parents have multiple degrees, so it's like you're also going to college. That's a thing. And I was like, okay, so I'm always been an high achiever, quote unquote, or overachiever. So I took advantage of my college and career counselors and went to all the college tours that they offered and went to all the workshops, and I was super invested in applying to college. I think I applied to 22
colleges?
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. And my parents were like, why are you doing this? You're only going to go to one. And I was like, I don't know. I just want to give myself the best opportunity to
I'm interested in so much. I just maybe I'm
this school offers that.
Right. First year I'll do this.
Exactly.
I'll transfer to that school.
Basically, I get into a couple different schools. I had got into some schools in California, and I was really jazzed about that. I was like, I'm going to get out of Washington and go have this like really amazing college experience. It's going to be so cool. And I got into USC, and I was like super pumped. I was like, USC, that's so dope. And I had no idea how expensive college was. I had absolutely no idea. I was like, if I apply, I can go.
Right.
There's no cost. Yeah, no, that's true. You don't think about cost.
Right? No, right, absolutely.
Tuition? What?
And even if you do think about cost, as a student, for me, I was very privileged. I never wanted for anything.
Right.
So, and then were able to make sure of that. And so when it came down to like conceptualizing how much $60,000 a year was, like I I didn't know what that meant. I was like, is that a lot? I don't know. Like,
Right.
$60,000.
And so my parents were like, yeah, that's a lot. And I was like, oh, well, like student loans, right? Like I'll just have loans cover it. And they're like, I don't think you want to graduate with like
All that debt.
$200,000
Right.
of debt. And I was like, I was really upset that I couldn't go to USC because they were not trying to give me no financial aid. And unfortunately, I wasn't that academically gifted that they would give me like a full ride or anything. So I couldn't go. But I also got into Scripps College, which was the women's college in the Claremont Consortium. And like they were really invested in having me come. They flew me down there for a tour for like their little admissions day, and my parents came, and I was like, oh my gosh, it's amazing, it's California and it's all women and it's so cool and it's part of the consortium and this is where I want to go, this is it. My parents came with me and they're like, well, you know, $50,000 a year is pretty expensive too. And I was like, what? This is not how it's supposed to go. You told me that if I was good in school and I did my best and I tried my hardest, I could go wherever I wanted. And then like being smacked with that reality that I couldn't because of money was like, that was like, I had like a mental breakdown. Like I remember I was just like in tears bawling because my parents finally told me I couldn't go. And it was hard because at that time we had put a deposit down at Scripps to save my spot. And so I'm like, I'm going, like that's where I'm gonna be going.
I already got a spot.
And they were like trying to work with the financial aid office to make it happen, and it just, we couldn't cover the gap. And so like I was hella disappointed. Little did I know my dad also put a deposit down at UW, which I think you're not supposed to do, but he did. And he was like, well, you can go to UW. And I was like, man, don't nobody want to go to UW. It's right there. Everybody goes to UW. Because I think like 40 or 50 kids from my graduating class also went to UW.
Wow.
And I was like, man, it's not cool. I wanted to go to California. It's not fair. So I ended up at the UW. And I was hot on orientation day. I had to be there.
I don't want to be here.
But you liked purple and everything.
Right. I tell people that the only reason I went to UW is because their school colors are purple. Had purple in it, and that's my favorite color. And the only other school that I thought was good enough that had purple was, I think, Northwestern in Chicago.
Yep.
And I was like, that's too far.
Did you apply?
I did not apply to Northwestern.
So, okay, as a freshman, you're new to campus. Did you join any clubs or activities?
Oh, yes. I joined all the clubs and activities.
All of them?
All of them. All like 900 or so of them. No, the first thing I looked for was a Black Student Union, because I had heard about them through the outreach programs and seen some Black students. And I was one of the like founding members of the African American Club at Stadium High School. I remember I joined the band, the symphonic band initially, and there was an organization related to the band called Kappa Kappa Psi that I joined. It's like a band fraternity. And then what else? I remember I just went to a lot of club meetings just to see like what was out there and what I could do. And especially related to like my classes, because there's always something related to your department.
Right.
I was part of a FIG, which was the first year interest group, my fall quarter, and so I spent a lot of time with people in my FIG, and I made like 2 really good friends out of that we still keep in contact.
What was the concentration for the FIG?
So it wasn't a concentration, but we took all the same classes together. And so
Isn't it like, because I took a FIG, and our focus was we all wanted to go into communication.
And I think they tried not to do that anymore because they're meant to like explore. So they just give you like this block of classes, and like everybody has the same class schedule for fall quarter.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just joined a lot of stuff, a lot of things. I went to the meeting for the first time and then didn't go again. And I was just trying stuff out, like, okay, these are not my people. These are not my people. These are not my people. Let me just stick with the BSU.
So you only stuck with the BSU?
Yeah, for the most. That was what I got like involved in. But I knew about the other clubs, and I knew about people. I knew people who were in them. So like I sort of like stayed abreast of what was happening. But I was like, don't ask me to do nothing for the club.
What are you involved with now? You said BSU was the only thing that you kept attending. Is that it, or what else are you? What other activities are you involved with?
Well, Actually, I would say that BSU was the only thing I kept doing because I kept doing a lot of stuff. I kept doing way too much stuff. Like, I was super involved in, like, leadership stuff. I worked a lot of different jobs on campus. I was in the band for, like, 3.5 years and, like, all different kinds of bands. And so I stayed busy. And right now, I am moving into other different things. And so, you know, this is my 5th year at the UW. I was feeling kind of old. I was like, you know, I'm on my way out. And it's time for me to move on. I feel a little bit like too big for the UW almost. Like, so there are some things that I was like, okay, I'm leaving. What haven't I done yet that I can do or take advantage of? Because UW has so many opportunities. It's so great to be a student. Everything is like discounted and free.
Hey, discounted and free. I'll say it again.
Best word.
Yes, that's my favorite word. Free.
Free.
So right now, I still consider myself a member of the BSU. I go to their events when I can. I do live in Tacoma now, so being on campus until like 8 or 9:30 is a bit of a stretch.
That commute is so deep.
Tell me about it. Especially when the direct bus stops running at 5 and you have to take a bus downtown and then take the light rail and then take another bus and then catch another bus to get home.
Oh no.
But anyway, what am I doing now? I am a writer for The Daily, which is our student newspaper. I am in my third and a half quarter of hosting a radio show at the student radio station.
What's it called?
My show is called Louder for the People in the Back, and it is on Rainy Dog Radio. You can find it and listen to it on rainydog.org. And what else am I doing? I am working with actually this is really cool. I just did it today, and we had our like 3rd or 4th meeting. But some folks in administration have a pretty close tie to students, and so we were telling them like what we felt like we needed, and we were able to put together this event, like these series of events that are about like professional development and things that you probably aren't being told in classes but you need for the professional world, about like how do you network and how do you move through the world and how do you like make your way up the corporate ladder while still having like a soul, you know. So that's been really fun and participating in that. I am volunteering with Shelf Life Community Storytelling Booth with a certain someone we all know.
Hey.
And that's been a lot of fun. I met so many great and amazing people. I'm working on a podcast for The Daily right now. I'm writing a column I'm contributing an article for a column for the Seattle Times Ed Lab. I am a fellow for the International Policy Institute, Cybersecurity International Policy Institute in the Jackson School. So I write research and write articles for them. And
Mary Gates Scholar.
Mary Gates Leadership Scholarship Award winner. That's all the stuff that I can think of that's on my calendar.
So,
Wow.
and that's everything that you're doing right now.
Yeah.
Right.
But-
This moment.
Right.
Do any of those interest you? I'm just
Yeah.
All of them.
Not really. It all interests me.
So, but also, I definitely don't want to skip over. Can you run down your highlight reel? Because part of the reason why we wanted to have you on the show is because you have so many accolades to your name and so many things that you've been able to do as a student at the University of Washington, and we wanted to make sure we had you on our show before you took off and got too big for it.
forget the little people.
Right.
Oh my goodness, my highlight reel. Do you want like stuff that like I've been awarded for, or just like stuff that I've done?
Just
Dang.
man.
Well,
Send us
the
your
stuff-
resume.
The stuff
and
that I've
then
been awarded for is like way less than the stuff that I've actually done.
Give me the things that you've been awarded for
How
and
about-
the high achievements.
Or what are you proud of?
Yeah.
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 Things that you've done that you're very proud of.
Right.
Okay, things that I'm very proud of. Okay, I gotta think all the way back.
When I was in kindergarten.
Starting college. Starting college.
Oh yeah, I gotta think back to like my freshman year.
Yeah.
I remember, okay, so the summer after my freshman year, I was an orientation leader. And that was like, I'm really proud that I completed that summer because it was like the biggest, it was such a leap for me. Like I was talking to groups of 600 students every day.
Wow.
And
Wow.
so that, and for me, who's an introvert who like talks to one person at a time, like, and I had to like perform in skits for these kids and make them laugh. And
Right.
like, they're like, fresh out of high school, so this is a tough crowd.
And it
Right,
was
right.
So
And I
I
just got into UW.
had to do that all summer. So that was something that I was really proud of. And that was the first like paid work I ever had. So like I saw that paycheck and I was like, hey, this is cool.
Right.
After that I was a writing tutor at the Writing and Research Center, and that was cool because I got to learn about so many more things that were happening on campus because we got everyone from everywhere. I'm really proud of my involvement and leadership in the Black Student Union, which we've talked about. What else am I proud of? I'm proud of my radio show. That was a stretch. I love writing for the Daily. That was a stretch. That made me stronger. I'm really proud that I was selected as the 2015 Homecoming Queen.
Hey.
I remember I told my mom, and she was like, you were selected Homecoming Queen for the whole UW? Like, she was mad skeptical.
Were you just, did the BSU give you that? All the students?
And she was like, how does that work? And now she like, because normally like you vote on something like that, right? So
Yeah.
like it's supposed to be by a student body, but the way UW does it is that it's a scholarship. So you apply for homecoming court.
Nice.
And I remember I didn't get it the year before. And I was like, let me try again to see. Maybe I'm like more popping this year and they'll give it to me.
Hey, persistence kids.
So I got it the second time around, and I got the Queen, which was like a bigger scholarship than just being on the court.
Hey.
So I was like, cool.
No
I felt
shade.
really good about that. And I was in the band in the marching band at the time, so they like presented us on the field during the football game. And I was like in my band uniform with my little crown on. It was so cool. You know?
Nice.
Do you have pictures from that?
I do.
Okay.
I
Nice.
do. My director was very excited.
He does.
I loved being in the marching band. That was a stretch. My high school did not have a marching band. I had only done sit-down bands. The most we marched was in a parade, and that was like stay in a straight line.
Right. Right.
And so learning, like that was a whole new language and domain that I had to learn. And it's like a sport. Like we were there all the time. As much as the football team was there, we were there. So that was a stretch.
Did you travel with the team?
It depended on like how far they were going, but sometimes we would send like a little pep band to go, which was like part of the marching band,
Okay.
and they'd play in the
Sounds
stands and
cute.
stuff. So I got to travel a little bit.
Nice.
I know that you were a part of the Husky 100.
I was part of the Husky 100, the inaugural class. That was fun. There's like a nomination form, and it sends you an email every like when you're nominated by someone to like apply for the thing. And so I remember I kept getting it from like different people. I was like, what is this thing?
And tell folks what that is.
Yeah, so the Husky 100 is a program that was started to recognize like student involvement at the UW. And so what they do is, I think it's the Office of Student Life, but don't quote me on that. They have students from all 3 campuses. Either you're nominated or you can nominate yourself, and you apply, and you basically just say like about what you've been involved in on campus, and then they go through and they select 100 students that have like really exemplify like UW values and involvement, and they want to have like a wide range of students who are involved in things that they do. So I was selected as one of the first 100 students to be recognized, and that was cool.
Nice. So tell me about traveling in the places that you've gone, not just as a student, but just tell me about traveling and how it impacted your understanding of culture.
Yeah, traveling is probably the biggest reason why I wanted to be an international studies major. I thought that would allow me to travel places. That's not how international studies works. But yeah, the first place I ever traveled in terms of like leaving the country was to Nigeria when I was in 3rd grade. And that was to visit my dad's family for the first time. And so that was interesting. I vividly remember getting off the plane and it just being like this wave of heat that I never experienced before ever in my life. I was like, oh God, it's so hot, I can't breathe.
No.
And I remember like the roads are really like dusty and the dust is red, and I remember I was wearing flip-flops and my feet got all dusty and red. and it was like kind of misty rain that we kind of get around here. That's like rain but it's not really rain. You feel wet.
Right.
I remember it was that, and so it was like that kind of weather, but it was hot. I was like, this sucks. Horrible.
You grew up here? What?
But it was cool and it was really different. Like, I feel like a good way to engage with a new culture is to like see how people drive, because that's totally different. Here driving is so like controlled and everybody knows the way, like everybody's trained the same way to drive and everybody knows what everything means. And when we were in Nigeria, it was like everybody for everything. Like you could do whatever you wanted on the road. And it was scary. Like it was scary. And I remember seeing for the first time like armed people on the road, and there was like, I think at the time there was like, I remember you would like have to bribe the people to like get by. I was going to say,
you got, where's your taxes?
Yeah, you gotta bribe people to get by. So that was interesting. And that was the first time that I was like, oh, this is different. People live like real different in other places. And I remember like we slept under the mosquito nets, and like everybody had a generator because electricity was never consistent. And I remember they had a video game console at my cousin's house, and I just wanted to play the video game. They're like, no, we can't use the generator right now, so we can't play it. And I was like really confused by that. Like, why can't we just turn it on? Like, what's up? And so it took me a long time to figure out like, okay, I need to find something else to do.
Right. It's like, so I can't play Mario. Is that what you're telling me?
I was just confused.
Right.
I just want to play the game. Yeah, that was the first place that I traveled outside the U.S. After that, there was a program in my middle school, that was an exchange program to New Zealand. And the school was at the city in New Zealand was at the same point of longitude and latitude, but opposite from where we were.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
I don't remember why they decided to do that, but that's what it was. And so they had this exchange program for a long time. And so I went there and I had like a host family, and I had a host sister and a host mom and dad and brothers, and there was sheep everywhere, and it was super green. And I remember that was the first time we did a lot of stuff that I was not used to, like hiking and like going out on boats and stuff. And I was real outside of my comfort zone. Just in like terms of the activities that we were doing, like that was like, I was like,
it's like, okay,
wow, this is different. And the people that I stayed with like kind of lived on a farm, like they had animals. And I remember we went deep sea fishing, and like I caught my dinner that night, and my host dad like fried the fish. It was like really interesting.
How long were you there for?
I was there for the month of February.
Oh, wow. Was it just you or a bunch of kids?
And there was like around 20 of us that went, but we all had our own host families.
Oh wow.
Close together, or like were your host families like in the same areas, or?
All of the kids from the host families went to the same school.
Okay.
So we weren't like necessarily in the same neighborhood, but like they were like in the same general area. And so yeah, that was interesting. And after that, my band program in high school, or there was like a program in high school called the Washington Ambassadors of Music, and they just took like high schoolers from all over the state, and they did like a tour through Europe.
Wow.
And I think every state has one. But you basically we did 2 weeks in Europe. We went through like 7 different countries. And just did like a music in the parks type thing. And it was like a regular thing, like people in those areas knew about it, like it was like a tradition or something. So you'd always come and like hear these American kids play this music. I played Stars and Stripes Forever so many times. I never.
Each part you're playing the same song.
We practiced for a whole summer.
That one song. We're gonna be really good with this one.
Oh God, I played that song so many times. But then also in my high school, we had a final band concert every year, and the last song is always Stars and Stripes Forever. And this like giant American flag drops down at the bridge, and all of the band kids come out and fill the aisles, and like it's like this huge dramatic thing.
Yeah.
But I played Stars and Stripes Forever so many times. Like I never want to play that song again.
Just in case you didn't know you was American.
Like, Lord. And then
that to your playlist.
Definitely adding that to your playlist.
don't torture me like that.
Get the live version, please.
Find the version you did.
Yeah, get the live
Old
version.
footage of you.
Right, that has to exist. Stadium High School, class of.
This has been fun so far, guys. Don't do this. And then the last place that I traveled to was I did a study abroad program at the UW to Peru.
Wow.
And I spent 6 weeks I spent 5 weeks in Lima and then another week in Cusco.
What year was this?
This was 2015.
Okay.
Summer of
Nice.
2015.
Nice.
And that was cool because like I was like sort of an adult.
Yeah.
So like I was still like not paying for it, but like I got to like go. We went with like as a class and we all stayed together, but like you basically had independence to do whatever you want. So like I met a bunch of people and went out and like tried different foods and traveled. I traveled to the program was 5 weeks, so the week that I spent in Cusco I traveled by myself.
Wow.
And that was like hella scary. Like ooh, that was scary.
Do you speak Spanish?
I speak a little bit of Spanish.
She said, I learned then.
I learned how to speak Spanish.
Right.
And so I traveled there by myself, but I met some other kids, some other girls who were also on the program with me. They came a little bit later. And so we split some rooms while we were there.
Okay.
But for the most part, like I spent a lot of time during that week by myself trying to figure things out and not get taken advantage of.
They're like, what? Come here.
For the study abroad trip, what were you guys studying?
Yeah, so the project was called The Arts of Politics. And they were looking at how artists and scholars and activists thought about memory in a post-conflict nation. So Peru had just finished like a Truth and Reconciliation Commission that had discovered all of these like acts of violence that had happened during it was like a civil war almost in Peru. And it was like a really, really violent time. Like a lot of atrocities were committed. And so there's a version that the state wants to tell and a version that like the people actually know.
Right.
And so the activists and scholars that we were talking to were trying to engage that memory with like the population and like say like this is what happened to us and here's how we need to deal with it. And so all of the students did like independent research projects, and we were just learning about all of these things that happened and how people like were disappeared and how women like indigenous women were like forcibly sterilized and like
Wow.
And then there's a lot of art that came out of that, so we went to this like super interactive play about it, and like the two main artists that we were working with had like this whole mobile museum that they took to different cities. And this is where I really got interested in like being creative and like creating media and creating projects and things like that. And because for so long I had just studied stuff, and I was like, after this program I was like, I want to make stuff, and I want to make stuff that people interact with. And one of the things that I remember the most was that this artist, Karen Bernardo, and she worked with Jorge Miyagi and Mauricio Delgado. They all work together on the mobile museum, but one of their projects was to make road signs that depicted where acts of violence happen. And so they created this whole like language that was based off of road signs that would get people's attention, but then they'd be like, oh, that's not what that means. This means something different. Or like when you get on the bus in Peru, they give you like it's like a little ticket, similar to like a transfer, but smaller. Karen Bernardo, she put the faces of disappeared people on the backs of those. It's like people would get them and they think it was a bus ticket, and on the back they see this like story of a missing person. Wow. So yeah, stuff like that was really cool. And there's a political figure there that is not the most liked as an understatement, but Karen put his face on like the backs of matchboxes, and so like to sort of symbolize that he like was a catalyst for a lot of the destruction that happened in Peru. So
Was he
like,
the president?
yes.
The Japanese guy?
Yeah.
I heard about him.
Yeah. So that was really influential for me, that experience, like seeing how people engage in that way and could do things that were creative and socially motivated and about social justice and be celebrated for it. So
Wow.
Yeah, that's amazing. And it also just makes me think about the amount of world history that we don't talk, not even world history, but the amount of contemporary world events that we don't talk about in the United States. Yet whenever I've been abroad, people know exactly what's going on in the United States and a ton of other countries and just around the world, right? And so it's really interesting.
I was just talking about that today with some students, and one of the students, he's an exchange student from Australia, and he was like, well, you guys live in America, but in Australia, we live in America's world. Like everything is pegged against what happens in the United States. We know, like he's an American studies major, like so he like part of their public education is to know what's happening in the United States.
Wow.
And like they know everything about like American culture. And I found this in Peru and like anywhere that I've been.
The
And
American history, right?
Everybody knows. And he's like, yeah, we study like Trayvon Martin. What happened with Trayvon Martin was front page news in Australia.
Wow.
And I was like,
It wasn't even front page news in Florida.
Wow.
It's crazy.
And I think for a lot of people, they know more about like American history than we're taught, than we do.
They know more about the English language than we
We
do.
do. And so it's like that was really interesting. I remember being in Peru. One of my friends, her independence project was, she was looking at hip hop culture in Peru. Because they're trying to start a Zulu chapter in Peru. And so we went to like place we probably shouldn't have been going, especially not having like a real grasp of the language.
Common thing.
It was a little precarious situations. But there were like these block parties where the hip hop crew that was there was just like holding space for kids to hang out and to like learn about music and to break dance and all kinds of stuff. One of our really good friends, Freddie, he's a break dancer, and so we went to like some break dance competition and stuff like that. It was really cool. But they all wanted to talk to us about like race relations in America, and they wanted to talk about like Biggie and Tupac, and they wanted to talk about like, you know, what's it like being black in America, and like what are the relationships between black people and like indigenous people. And we were like, I don't even know what to say about that. Like, you know more about it than I do.
Like, these are conversations we have on the daily. They're like, what?
It was really interesting. Like, that was very eye-opening to me.
Wow. And so wrapping up.
Oh, it's almost over.
It's been here for 2.5 hours. Wrapping up. What songs would you like on your playlist?
I was thinking about this on the way over here, and I was like, shoot, I don't know. What I've been listening to most recently is some Ella Fitzgerald. Misty by Ella Fitzgerald and My Funny Valentine are my favorites. And then I also, I am a subscriber to Tidal.
Shout out.
First person
Shout out to Jay-Z.
Are you subscribed to anything else?
No, just Tidal.
Okay.
I felt like that would be overkill. Like, why do I need to subscribe to like?
But I mean,
all the different
I've heard
services.
It's kind of like some people who subscribe to Netflix and Hulu, and anyways.
No, I just choose Netflix.
Information.
I don't do
I'm just with Netflix too. Shout out Team Netflix.
But yeah, Tidal has this really great Mary J. Blige playlist, and it has like a really good mix of all her stuff. What's the song? I'm Going Down. I play that a lot, especially right now, because
Okay.
it's that time. I'm going down and then not gonna cry. Cause like,
oh man,
it's like when you feel down, you need I'm going down. But then when you're down there, you're like, you know what? No, I'm not gonna cry about this.
Listen, what is his name? We will find him.
don't need to get into
Right,
that on the
that's a whole other
podcast.
podcast. That's a whole, look, as soon as you said Mary J, I was like, ooh. off podcast. And then, are there any more questions before we go?
Also, if you could put some Joey Badass on there, that's relevant to me right now.
A land of the free is full of freeloaders.
This would be a fun playlist.
That dude said 2 A's, 3 K's in America.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me one piece of advice that you would give a student like yourself who is interested in applying to college this fall.
Ooh. Just one?
Top three.
Top three.
And more than anything, for anyone who is like me and Black person wanting to enter an institution of higher education, I would say be curious, but protect the core. So engage in activities, learn about stuff, pursue all of your interests, but always make sure that you are looking out for your heart and your soul.
Damn.
That's really good.
Thank you.
Wow.
Thank you. That was awesome. Wow. Well, thank you so much for allowing us to take so much of your time. This is really amazing.
Yeah,
this
thank you
awesome.
for having me. I had
Yes.
such good questions. Lots of stuff that I hadn't thought about before.
See?
Oh, that was cool.
Well, we hope to see you soon, and we can't wait to hear your podcast.
Hopefully there's some good stuff on there. I felt like I just kind of rambled.
No,
No,
this
it's
is
good. It's
awesome.
good.
This
Okay,
is really
cool.
awesome.
This is Mayowa Aina, and you are listening to the No Blueprint podcast. Do it for the culture.